Imagine a world where more women had the time to fully explore their genius. Welcome to She Rebel Radio, the UK's podcast for women leaders and founders ready to unlearn conventional rules and lead their businesses of significance. We've been held for counter-status quo ideas and a whole dose of feminine perspective. This is our 8th series. My name's Lulu Minns and I host retreats and create spaces for women leaders to explore their genius. And today, I'm going to create that same space right here for you on this podcast. Welcome to episode 123 of She Rebel Radio, Writing for Children with Alison Reddihough. Alison is the co-founder, writer and director of Tickled Moon, which is an e-commerce business that creates beautiful personalised children's books. They've published 6 books to date, including The Longest Cuddle in the World, The Joyful Adventures, and The Christmas Boo. And hot off the press, The Sleepy Town Express is being published the day after this episode, so you can order it from the 30th of September. Tickled Moon books have been featured on ITV's This Morning, BBC Radio, and the Indie Best Buy list, and might be one you want to consider for your Christmas children's list. Before co-founding the Tickled Moon, Alison worked both as a professional actor and voiceover actor, as well as co-director, producer and screenwriter for Amulet Films Limited. She's also qualified in NLP, Reiki and belief coding. Alison, it's great to have you here. How are you doing?
Very well, thank you. It's a lovely intro. Thank you very much, Lulu. It's great to be here.
It's really good to have you. And I'd love to start with, what is a book that you loved as a child or one that was significant for you growing up?
Oh, this is really tough to answer because I loved reading as a kid and there were so many books that I absorbed. But the one that really popped into my head straight away was actually a poetry book, which is the Oxford Book of Children's Verse. And it just fascinated me. I love dipping into it. And I love the rhyme and the rhythm of the poems, particularly the more modern ones and the stories that they told, the ones that told long stories. So Hilaire Belloc and A.A. Milne and Rudyard Kipling. And they just fascinated me. And I love speaking them out loud. I love the rhyme and rhythm. So from a very early age, I got sort of hooked into that form of writing.
Beautiful. Yeah, it's really interesting to see how that links back already to what you'll find yourself doing now. And I was only looking the other day, in fact, about there's 2 poetry books, I think, for a poem for every day of the year and a poem for every night of the year. Do you know that?
No, I haven't come across those. I have dipped into poetry a lot since, on and off, but there's so many books out there full of wonderful poems. It's hard to read them all, but I do love getting and reading poetry books.
Yeah, I only came across it the other day and I thought it was quite nice in terms of the seasonal element that would come through with that. So how did you shift from the world of acting and producing into writing children's books?
Well, I'd always written right from an early age. I loved writing poetry, stories, plays. I used to write little plays about my schoolmates. So I suppose it was always in my bones, writing, but my main passion was acting. And that sort of took my focus and drive. So I went off to become an actor and then went into producing and filmmaking with my husband, Simon. And eventually then children came along and I had a little bit more time on my, as they grew up and started going to school. And that's when the writing sort of came back in and I wrote some screenplays and back into poetry again. Never stopped writing poetry, really. So it was always something that has run through my whole life. And then there was literally a light bulb moment where I'd been looking around for something new to do. And I happened to be at a friend's house and she had a personalised business and was producing her first personalised book. And she showed it to me and I was looking through it and it was literally a ping of, whoa, I could do that. I just love the idea of writing a children's story with the children starring in it. And it was as if a floodgate opened and suddenly all these ideas came pouring out of me. And that's how how the business began. But for me, it felt like a culmination of a whole lifetime of writing and creating you know, because it's all the same process of creating a story and seeing it through and fulfilling it in whether it's writing, acting, producing, or even bringing up children. So
yeah, interesting. And as you said when we started this interview, that rhyme and rhythm and reading out loud, because you have sections of the book on your website, don't you, that people can listen to?
you can listen to the whole story read by me before you buy it, and you can also preview the book with your personalizations in, so you get a chance to read it all through. But yeah, and they're all, apart from our latest book, Sleepy Town, which is coming out, that's not in rhyme, but the others all are. And I just love it's very tricky, and it really challenges you as a writer to get the rhyming right and the rhythm right. But I love the challenge of it. And I don't know, it just seems to flow naturally for me. So yes, goes back to my love of poetry right at a very early age.
Yeah, beautiful. Now, at Tickled Moon, with your personalised books, you write them with a big heart. How do you personalise the books, and how important is the big heart aspect?
Well, the books all start with the story, and then it's how can the personalizations work into it, to make it really, really special for that child. So that's where it begins, and then we add, then it's factoring the child's name, which will feature on the cover throughout the story, making sure it's mentioned enough times to appeal, and then we add additional names as well, so you can include loved ones, parents, family, friends, pets. You can add gifts and favorite foods. I just tried to think what would be exciting for a child to sort of discover as they're reading this book, and they turn a page over and there's their teacher's name. You know, it's just fun for the kid, and their pet, you know, is joining in with this cuddle that stretches around the world. So that was the sort of personalization aspect. It's really just making sure that it ties in with the reader. And the big heart is so important. It's because it's the emotive response to the story. A lot of personalized books are sold purely on the personalization aspect, and it was really important to me that there was an emotive and well-written story there too. So that's where the big heart comes from, is just making sure that every time I read my stories, I want to feel goosebumps. I want to feel excited or delighted by it. And because I know then that someone else out there will respond in the same way. So it's really, yeah, that's the crucial for me for our stories, is that they have that sort of emotional connection and response. And again, the big heart is also the fact that personalized book is so personal for the child, and a memento for life. It's something that they will treasure forever because it connects to them, and that's part of their childhood.
Yeah, it's so important. And I think I've seen on your website, you know, that, as you said, you can add parents, pets and grandparents, and it's likely to be something that children will want to keep, you know, because we don't always have those people with us forever either. So it's
and for the grandparents particularly, they know they're not going to be around for the rest of the child's life, and it's a memento that they'll be carried forward. And I was given a personalized book by my brother when they've been around for a while now. This is about 40 years ago. And you know, it's treasured because it's a snapshot of that moment in time for me and my brother, and I know who gave it to me. I can't remember any other Christmas present I was given over my childhood, but this book is, you know, has been kept because it just speaks to that moment in time. So
yeah, we always get I've always, even now, a book from my parents, from an early age, and I keep most of them because my mum's always written in them and the date. So again, she's personalized them in that way. And even if the book might not resonate anymore, I'm like, oh, I can't throw that away because that's from mum and dad. You know, they've written in it, and with the date in, which is their way of personalizing. So what are the benefits of personalized books for children, and seeing their name in print and the names of those they love and their pet, etc.? How does that benefit children?
Well, they really do go above and beyond a regular storybook. Then there's numerous benefits. There was a study done by the National Literacy Trust in 2017, and there have been various studies in the US that have been carried out too, that looked into this really closely. And they discovered that it develops early communication, language, and literacy, because the child is much more engaged with the story, because it's all about them. So it's really exciting. And if a child's not used to reading, hasn't had that opportunity, this is a great way to introduce them to the love of reading, because they are the star of the story. So reading comprehension went up by 40% in one US study that looked at them, because of that engagement. And because it's also very empowering and motivating for the child too. They are the star, they're the hero or heroine, and they get to solve problems or do something fun and silly, or change the world even. And our books are fully inclusive too. We chose not to have sort of pictures of the child or any avatars in our books. We do it all through the language and the illustrations in another way, which is another challenge. But that's paid off, because it means that any child can be the star of the story, whatever their race or disability or gender. They're not shown, so that it's fully inclusive in that way. They're also, as we said before, a unique gift and a keepsake for life. So you may pay a little bit more because they're printed on demand, but how many other presents can you say will be treasured for the rest of the child's life because of that emotional connection? And what's lovely as well is that reading them if you're in the story with them, because say some of our books are for a child and adult, it's just wonderful to sit down with grandma in your story with you, or mummy or daddy. So they make lovely presents for sort of Mother's and Father's Days too, because it's just beautiful sitting there reading a story with your child anyway. But then when you're both in the story together, it's lovely for the parent as well as being delightful for the child.
Yeah, so many powerful elements there, including reading comprehension, being part of the story, creating narrative. And I know we've discussed briefly in terms of a previous She Rebel Radio episode of the male default. I remember as a child how often, that boys might be the main protagonist in the story,
yes,
etc. And, as you say, there's that inclusivity piece there, and you illustrate in a different way, and the child literally immerses themselves in the story. So those limitations aren't there that we've had previously.
Yes, absolutely. And we often get very poignantly books personalized for deceased loved ones. So whether that's a grandparent or sometimes even the child or the parent, which is really sad. But again, it's something that is unique that you wouldn't really get with any other book. So it's a chance to personalize it for any person, for any occasion. And that's what we try to do with our books, is to make them really versatile so that they can be personalized for, as I say, adults and children, or siblings or twins, or, for lots of different occasions throughout the year.
Yeah, and we can hear in your voice your storytelling ability. Now, how do you dive into the minds and hearts of children so you're able to write for them in a way that really does connect?
Well, I remember reading about a few other children's authors, and I really connected with that, because they all said the same thing, that there's a part of you that just hasn't really grown up, that you can really connect to your inner child, your inner kid. And I would definitely say that about myself. I find it very easy to connect to the child within me. So I write from and for her most of the time. If I think it's silly and fun, delightful, I know a child out there will hopefully feel the same. So it's definitely, yes, just finding that sort of inner child within you. And it helps having children around you. So I had lots of nephews and nieces around me growing up, and I adored being with them. And then of course I had two boys of my own who are now teenagers, and now I'm a great auntie, so I've got little kids around me two, which I absolutely adore, and I just love being with them, and I seem to be able to relate with them very easily. So I don't know whether that's a benefit or not, but it certainly helps for children's writing anyway.
Yeah, 100%. And I know part of your vision is to really create more positivity and that playfulness aspect in the world that children bring to us and our own inner child brings to us as well. Why do you think that's really important in the world as it is at the moment?
Oh, well, I mean, positivity, you can't get enough of it, really, can you? Spreading it. I mean, life is brutal at times, and there's lots of things pull us towards the negative in our daily lives, and just the media and everything around us. It's very easy to focus on what we don't have and what we can't get. So I've always felt I was a sort of healer as well at heart, and so I really want to help people find the positive in the world and engage with that in the most in the most fun ways that I can think of, which is why children's writing and doing these books sort of fulfills that in me in many ways. And playfulness is less acknowledged, but I think it's equally important, because it's all about just being light and being not taking life too seriously, which I think, again, we can all get very hung up on. And it's just having a smile on your face and a bounce in your step, and trying to find the joy in life, and again connecting to your inner child. So that's why those two words sort of seem very important to what we're doing, and how I feel about and what I want to spread around the world, I suppose.
Yeah, and I've had lots of conversations with people more recently that I think, finding that joy, realizing that's something that they do want to connect with, and realizing the difficulties that can come with that. Do you think that children have been impacted, more with what's happening in the world, in terms of when we were growing up, there wasn't things like lockdown and, worrying about passing things over to our grandparents and things like that they're needing that, or they have more exposure. I guess what I'm trying to say in terms of the media and the fear and negativity in the world, that it's important we as grown-ups keep that positivity and that playfulness.
Absolutely. It's changed immeasurably since I was a kid. We didn't even have mobile phones when I was growing up, and we had 3 channels on the TV, and our life can be really overwhelming now. So, but I think each generation seems to adapt to that, and they all evolve and grow. So it's very easy to think, oh, things weren't like that in my day, and how are my children going to adapt to this new fast-paced world? But I think they come in already adapted to some level, and they take it in their stride. That's their reality, and that's what they know. And they still have the same issues that we all deal with underneath it all, which are fear, anxiety, anger, all the basic emotions are exactly the same. So it's really just nurturing them and making sure that they focus on the right things and find the positive, and don't get too hung up on the negative and getting overwhelmed with things. So
yeah, I know I've had good fun with my nephew, showing him the lady that used to come on Channel 4 when the TV froze.
yeah.
He was fascinated by that. He was like, did that really happen? I was like, yeah, quite a lot, as well as banging the TV if it didn't work, was something that we used to do as well. So you've married together creativity and technology with Tickled Moon. What have been the challenges of setting up an e-commerce business, and how have you and your husband, you run the business together, worked on it together?
Yeah, well, we'd never done e-commerce before, so it has been a learning pole rather than a learning curve, because it was so steep. But a lot of it's common sense. A lot of it's we both invested in it 100%, because we always do, and we've both done numerous courses to learn what we can, and talk to people and networked, and done everything we can to do that. So, but ultimately it felt like a culmination of everything we've done so far, because it's all storytelling, it's all which you do as an actor, and it's all about, with producing and filmmaking, it's all about bringing that story to life. And you're sort of doing that with a business as well. You're sort of constantly finding new ways to solve challenges and puzzles in that way. And I mean, some of the biggest technical challenges for us were finding a printer for our books. So that was an initial, where do we go for that? And eventually we did find one, and then moved to another one after a year. also, how do we personalize these books? How do we get it from the customer to us in the most efficient way? So working out all the technology behind that, with setting up the website. And the biggest challenge of all is actually selling them, getting people to the website, and digital marketing. And there's been a lot of learning curves there as just by itself. So which we're still embarking on. But ultimately, we thankfully both embrace and love technology. We've always been fascinated by it, and there's a lot of creativity in technology as well. So my husband works a lot with code for the website, and he says that can be very frustrating but very satisfying. Again, it's like unlocking a puzzle and trying to work out how to make something better. So yes, it's sort of almost felt like a natural progression in many ways, and a culmination of everything we've done to date so far.
Yeah, beautiful. And how important would you say that your own self-development work has been in the curation and cultivation of your creative genius in Tickled Moon, where it's taken you?
Absolutely vital. I don't think I'd be here talking to you without it, because I'm a very sensitive person. I feel things very keenly. So life has easily got very overwhelming for me. And it was back when I was an actor, somebody suggested to me, oh, I think, why don't you try something like aromatherapy? And excuse me. And I thought, oh, yes, I fancy that. And it was because the life of being an actor was very much like a roller coaster, big highs and big lows. And aromatherapy was just something very gentle, very healing. And I loved it. And it started my whole journey of just loving the holistic and spiritual world of self-development. And I went on and trained in all these various other mediums, as you mentioned at the beginning: NLP, Reiki, quantum psionics, belief coding. I did that fairly recently. So it's an ongoing journey, which has just given me the tools to be able to ground myself and help keep me on an even keel. Because I did have some awful bouts of acute anxiety in the last sort of 20 years, which were crippling. And when you've been through things like that, you certainly don't want to go there again. So you find everything you can to sort of help dig you out of it. And I'm just curious about it. I love learning about our journey and why we're here and how we all tick. And so yes, that's sort of why it's been so important to me.
Yeah, and using those things to kind of maintain ourselves rather than, reaching crisis point and things like that. And I've got no doubt that you've interweaved many of those learnings and things, into the positivity and the playfulness of your children's stories as well.
Absolutely. Yeah, because as I said, the playfulness comes from part of this work, and realizing that you can't take life too seriously. You have to sort of step outside of it. And also that sensitivity, I think, also relates to the childlikeness in me, which helps me get into that child's mind. So yeah, it's been very helpful and important.
Yeah, and I feel really trusting those things that you're called to do, even though it doesn't always make logical sense at any particular time. But you just got to follow your path with that. Now, you've worked creatively for a number of years, which tends to be not a linear path. What would your advice be to them to be able to understand the creative process? Where's kind of a good place to start?
I think you just start with what your passion is, what draws you in, really. I mean, follow your passion. I remember years ago just thinking, oh, I really fancy doing an art class. And I didn't think I was any good at art, certainly nowhere near as good as someone like our illustrator, Jodie Wanford, who is just brilliant. She can just draw anything and it's beautiful, and she doesn't need, to look at something. It just comes straight from her, which is a talent I absolutely am in awe of. But I just really wanted to do it. And so it started with a desire, and then it went to, okay, a little bit of research, found a class. Then there's a sort of the courage going forward, pursuing it, not giving up at the first hurdle. I didn't know anyone. I went on my own. And it was just wonderful. It was a really lovely experience. I'm not great at art, but I did find some ways of expressing myself through it that I really enjoyed and thought was okay. And that's what I would recommend people to do. Be brave, take that step, even if you're on your own, and just follow what your heart, what draws you. And ultimately, I think we are all creative beings anyway. So everything that we do in life is creative, whether it's cooking a meal or dealing with a set of accounts. You have to have, a way of problem solving and puzzle solving, and that's all creativity. So, but for any other creative endeavors, just follow your passion and give it a go, and don't get hung up on the results or what other people are doing. Don't compare yourself. Just do it for yourself and love it and get what you can from it, because you will get wonderful rewards from it.
Yeah, absolutely. I think what you said is really key there is following your heart. And I think lots of people can get stuck in their head and a linear process, and that fear of failure. And, creativity is, as you say, really about following that passion. And that's a much more embodied experience, really.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely.
So, Alison, what is next for you at Tickled Moon, and where can our listeners find you?
Well, you can find us at tickledmoon.com. That's our main website where all our books are on display. And as I say, you can listen to the stories and preview them before you buy there as well. We're also on Etsy. Just search for a Tickled Moon shop. And we're on all social media as Tickled Moon, or tickled.moon on Instagram. That's a long story. So that's where you can find us. And up next for us, as you said at the beginning, is our latest book, which is called The Sleepy Town Express. And this is something slightly different for us. It's actually a story I wrote over, 14 years ago, when my little boy, then Harvey, who's now 19, was struggling to get to sleep, and I couldn't find anything. There were loads of baby sleep books, but I couldn't find anything to help toddlers sort of settle and calm down at bedtime. And I started telling him this story and singing him this song about going on this journey to Sleepy Town on a steam train called the Sleepy Town Express. Mm-hmm. So and I recently learned all about NLP and the power of language and how it can create change just through the words that you use, which is a real eye-opener to me at the time. So the book contains many positive and gentle but powerful suggestions that will help calm and soothe young children and help send them into a restful sleep. So it's designed as a sleep story and song that's like a sort of auditory comforter that the child can listen to sort of every night and knows that it's time to go to sleep, and will just be something that's really calming and soothing for them. So we're doing a personalised and a non-personalised version, so it can just be in regular bookshops as well, which is all very exciting and all very new for us. And I'm kind of hopeful that it will be a lovely addition to our library, but also help a lot of parents out there who might be struggling with a sleep times and bedtimes with small children.
Yeah, beautiful. An auditory comforter. And yeah, so often, again, that stimulation, the world is, far more stimulating than it was when we were growing up. And I know reading was always and still is my bedtime comforter, 100%. But before you go as well, Alison, we're really excited to see that book. Is why the Tickled Moon? What was the reason for the name of your company?
Oh, it's always so hard choosing a name when you start out with something. It's one of the hardest things. And we considered lots of different sort of ideas were popping up and different combinations of words. But Tickled Moon just really resonated because you associate reading stories a lot with bedtime, snuggling up with your child. And then Tickled because it had that playfulness and that friendliness. So the thought of the moon just being tickled and smiling and playful and fun just resonated with what we wanted to do and create and achieve. And yeah, we kept stuck with that from the beginning, and it seems to be something people easily remember too, which is nice.
Yeah, it's a really relatable name. And I know when I was a child, I used to think the moon followed me. at night time when you're out. So yeah, it's a brilliant name. Alison, it's been amazing to have you on She Rebel Radio. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you so much for having me, Lulu. It was a delight to talk to you. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to She Rebel Radio. If this episode has inspired you, please pass it on and share with at least one other incredible woman. Don't forget to also hit subscribe and leave us a review. You can find out more about me and my work at lulumins.com or on most social media platforms.